Whether you are investing in property stocks or actively looking for physical properties to buy, understanding the property market is crucial to make good investment decisions. This is So What's It About? Have you ever driven past a brand new condo and thought to yourself, wow, still so many empty units? Yeah, you're not alone. Malaysia's property market has been dealing with a pretty big issue, property overhang. But here's the twist, things are actually improving. First of all, what is even a property overhang? The first time I heard this term was in a serious meeting between investment bankers, a renowned property developer, and a group of fund managers. It was an analyst briefing. A property overhang is a situation where you have got completed homes sitting unsold for more than 9 months or so, depending on how you want to define it. In 2024, Malaysia still had more than 23,000 of these unsold units, worth nearly 14 billion ringgit. But that's a 10% drop in units and a 21% drop in value compared to last year. So, things are really getting better, but not quite there yet. How did we get into a situation like this? What went wrong in our property market to the point where property developers keep building homes until they can't be sold? Or put it in a different perspective, no matter what kind of homes were built, people were not buying enough. Let's turn back the clock to 2009. At that time, the world was in the middle of the global financial crisis, a meltdown caused by risky home loans, or what we now call subprime mortgages, in the US and other Western countries. Banks were collapsing, markets were crashing, and people everywhere were losing jobs and homes. To stop things from getting worse, governments around the world, including Malaysia, began rolling out stimulus measures to help restart their economies. In Malaysia's case, one of the sectors they wanted to boost was property. And that's where schemes like DIBS come in, which stands for Developer Interest Bearing Scheme. It was like a buy now pay later deal for homes. All you had to do was pay a small amount of down payment, maybe 5 or 10% of the property price. After that, you didn't have to pay anything until the property was completed. The developer would pay the interest on your loan for you during the construction. So, for a few years, you could basically own a property without paying anything every month. It was designed to make it easier for people to buy property, which in turn would keep the construction industry busy, create jobs, and keep money flowing through the economy. So, while the world was trying to recover from a crisis, Malaysia's property market was being given a boost, a well-meaning move, but one would later have some serious side effects. The ease of purchase encouraged speculations, with many buying properties not to live in but to flip for profit upon completion. This speculative buying inflated property prices significantly. According to the Khazanah Research Institute, the compound annual growth rate or CAGR of property prices jumped from 3.1% to 10.1% during the DIBS period. As prices went up, affordability became a pressing issue. By 2016, the average house price was about 4.8 times the average Malaysian household income, putting home ownership out of reach for many people. The government recognized these challenges and, in Budget 2014, abolished DIBS to curb speculation and control escalating property prices. Despite the end of DIBS, the damage is done. The market now faces a new challenge, an oversupply of properties. Developers have flooded the market with high-end units during the DIBS boom, many of which remain unsold post-construction. This led to the property overhang issue, where completed units sat vacant, tying up resources and impacting the broader economy. In response, the government introduced initiatives like the Home Ownership Campaign (HOC) to promote the sale of unsold units and launch affordable housing schemes to address the mismatch between supply and demand. These efforts aim to stabilize the market and make home ownership more accessible to Malaysians. But despite these efforts, the overhang problem didn't just disappear. Because just as things were starting to improve, something else came along and froze the market entirely: COVID-19. The pandemic didn't just affect people's health, it froze the economy. Suddenly, all that buzz around property buying came to a screeching halt. Think about it. People weren't going to open houses anymore, and everyone was too focused on staying safe and managing the uncertainty around them. Businesses closed, borders were locked down, and in the blink of an eye, the property market came to a standstill. Property transactions dropped like a rock. But let's zoom out a bit and look at the situation from a different angle. If we think about the property market in Malaysia, we can divide it into hotspots, places where developers have been going all out. But what makes a hotspot in the first place? Developers are always looking for places where they believe the demand for housing will be the highest. And historically, these hotspots have been Johor, the Klang Valley, and Penang. Let's take a closer look at each of these areas to understand why they have been hit so hard and how they are trying to bounce back. Let's start with Johor. For years, Johor was a gold mine for developers. Why? Because of its location just across the border from Singapore. Developers saw an opportunity to cater to the growing demand from Singaporean investors, many of whom were looking for properties that could serve as vacation homes or second homes in Malaysia. But the more significant catalyst in Johor was the proposed high-speed rail project, envisioned to connect Singapore through Malaysia and extend towards Thailand, eventually integrating into the broader network under China's Belt and Road Initiative. This ambitious plan aimed to enhance regional connectivity, facilitating seamless travel and trade across Southeast Asia. The prospect of an high-speed rail link promised to position Johor as a pivotal transit hub, attracting both investors and developers eager to capitalize on anticipated economic growth. But the project faced multiple delays due to funding disputes. On top of that, design disagreements and the COVID-19 pandemic. Until today, we are not sure if we will even have a high-speed rail in Malaysia. Also, during this period of time, the Malaysian government launched the Iskandar Malaysia development in 2006, designating it as a special economic zone aimed at transforming southern Johor into a thriving metropolis. Spanning approximately 2,200 square kilometers, Iskandar Malaysia was envisioned to be a catalyst for economic growth, targeting key sectors such as finance, education, healthcare, and tourism. The initiative aimed to double the region's population from 1.6 million in 2006 to 3 million by 2025, with an anticipated annual GDP growth at the rate of 6%. The establishment of Iskandar Malaysia attracted significant attention from both local and international investors. A notable example is the opening of Legoland Malaysia in 2012, marking the first Legoland theme park in Asia. This development not only boosted tourism, but also signaled confidence in Johor's potential as a regional entertainment and lifestyle hub. These combined factors, the strategic location, the infrastructural prospects like the high-speed rail, and dedicated economic initiatives like Iskandar Malaysia, created a fervent environment for property development in Johor. Developers launched numerous projects, particularly high-end condominiums and luxury residences, anticipating robust demand from both local and international buyers. However, as we'll explore, the rapid expansion eventually led to challenges in the property market, including oversupply and affordability concerns. As we move northwards now from Johor, we arrive at the heart of Malaysia, the central region, more specifically, the Klang Valley. During the property boom years, especially between early 2010s leading up to the mid-2010s, developers were on a roll. Encouraged by the momentum created from schemes like DIBS and eager to ride the wave of rising prices, they launched projects after projects across the Klang Valley. The skyline began to transform rapidly. Everywhere you look, there were new launches. High-end condominiums, service apartments with infinity pools and concierge services, and mixed-use developments that promise a lifestyle upgrade, not just a place to live. But beneath the shiny brochures and glossy showrooms was a growing issue no one wanted to talk about. The focus had shifted toward the mid to high income segment, and affordability was slowly pushed aside. It wasn't uncommon to find two-bedroom units priced at 600,000 and above in a location far from the city centre. Developers justified the pricing with facilities and finishes, but the core problem remained. The majority of Malaysians simply couldn't afford what was being built. As early as 2016, signs of saturation began to emerge. While developers were still confident that their properties would sell, perhaps to investors, perhaps to foreign buyers, the data showed a different story. House prices in Klang Valley were already nearly 5 times the average household income. First-time home buyers were definitely being priced out, and even for upgraders, the decision to purchase became a cautious one. The gap between what people could afford and what was being offered became too wide, and slowly the overhang started to build. To address this issue, home buyers started exploring areas once considered too far or too disconnected. Towns like Semenyih, Rawang, Puncak Alam and Bangi began appearing in property conversations. What they lack in centrality, they made up for in space, price, and the most important thing, potential. At first, these areas were dismissed by city dwellers who couldn't imagine trading a KL postcode for a longer commute. But over time, developers started building more than just homes. They built townships. These weren't just rows of houses, but full communities with parks, schools, commercial areas, and recreational facilities. The addition of new highways like the Guthrie Corridor, Lata Expressway, and enhanced links via the Lekas and Elite highways made these places far more accessible than before. For many young families, the equation became simple. A 915 square foot condo in KL or a double-story terrace with a backyard in Semenyih for the same price. To be honest, in my opinion, while the overhang in the Klang Valley continues to make headlines, it's not that serious. Yes, the city centre may be grappling with unsold luxury units, but beyond the city limits, there's real growth happening, driven by people, affordability and infrastructure. Klang Valley isn't shrinking, it's evolving and shifting its weight to where the next generation of homeowners are ready to plant their roots. Okay, as we head further north, we arrive at Penang. The island state known for its charm, heritage and status as one of Malaysia's most livable places. With all this character and activity packed into a small island, property demand in Penang was always strong, especially on the island side. The limited land and sea-locked geography created an impression of scarcity, and developers knew this. As more people moved to the island and as more investors came looking for opportunities, developers responded the only way they could, by building upwards. By the early 2010s, Penang Island was in the midst of a full-blown construction boom. New condominiums started popping up in Tanjung Tokong, Batu Ferringhi, Gelugo, and Bayan Lepas. With sea views, modern designs, and promises of resort-style living, these developments weren't just targeting locals. Many were aimed at foreign retirees, MM2H applicants, and property investors from KL and Singapore who saw Penang as a beautiful, appreciating asset. But somewhere along the way, the narrative began to shift. While the luxury segment grew, many Penangites began to feel left out of their own island. Local incomes hadn't kept pace with rising property prices. Much like Klang Valley, developers in Penang were building for those who could afford 800,000 to 1 million ringgit homes, while many real demand buyers were looking at budgets half that amount. With land on the island getting increasingly scarce and expensive, attention turned to mainland Penang, particularly Batu Kawan. Now, if you ask a Penangite about Batu Kawan 10 years ago, many would have told you it was just another sleepy corner near the Penang Second Bridge. But a quiet transformation was brewing. The state government identified Batu Kawan as a new growth zone, not just for housing, but for industry, education, and commerce. Just like the other regions we have covered, Penang also faced the same delicate balancing act between supply and demand, between affordability and aspiration, and between development and sustainability. For investors, the opportunity lies in watching where the jobs are going, where infrastructure is being built, and where livable, community-friendly townships are being planned, not just where the sea view is the nicest. The overhang issue in Penang, like in Johor and Klang Valley, wasn't created overnight. It was the result of years of chasing the wrong kind of demand, speculative, high-end, and disconnected from the real buyers on the ground. But now, as the state shifts its focus, there's a chance to reset, to align housing with economic growth and social needs. Now that we have explored Johor, Klang Valley and Penang, the big three hotspots of Malaysia's property market, it's time to shift our attention to something a little bit different. There are places that don't typically make headlines, They don't have towering skylines or million-dollar condos with infinity pools. But what they lack in glamour, they make up for it in something equally valuable: opportunity. While many developers in major regions were busy chasing foreign investors and speculative buyers, something else was quietly happening in Malaysia's industrial corridors. In regions like Samalaju in Sarawak and Kuantan in Pahang, demand for property wasn't driven by fancy marketing campaigns. It was driven by something far more grounded: industry and jobs. Let's start with Samalaju, a purpose-built zone designed to house energy-intensive industries. The park was established as part of Sarawak Corridor of Renewable Energy Initiative, or sometimes known as the SCORE project, which uses hydroelectric power from the Bakun Dam to provide cheaper electricity for industries like aluminium smelting and ferroalloy production. Companies like Press Metal and OM Holdings have set up massive facilities here, taking advantage of the low-cost power supply. These industries brought thousands of workers, engineers, technicians, operators, all of whom needed places to live. The demand wasn't for luxury condos or service apartments. It was for practical housing, affordable homes, worker accommodations, and rental units to serve the growing workforce. Developers who saw these needs started focusing on low to mid-range housing rather than speculative high-rises. Next, let's head to the east coast, to the port city of Kuantan in Pahang. Kuantan has always been a strategic location. Sitting along the South China Sea, it has long served as a major hub for trade and logistics. But in recent years, its role has expanded far beyond just moving cargo. A game changer here is the Malaysia-China Kuantan Industrial Park. Established in 2013 as a joint venture between Malaysia and China, it was designed as a sister park to the China-Malaysia Qingzhou Industrial Park in China, forming a direct industrial and economic link between the two countries. The concept was simple. China wanted an efficient, strategically located industrial hub in Southeast Asia, and Malaysia wanted foreign direct investment. Kuantan was the perfect choice, especially with its deep water port and easy access to regional trade routes. With heavy industries like steel, petrochemicals, and automotive parts setting up shops in Kuantan Industrial Park, the region saw a sharp increase in employment opportunities. But once again, industrial growth brought with it a new demand: housing. Workers needed homes close to their workplace. Service providers, retail businesses, and logistic firms also needed accommodations for their staff. And here's where it gets interesting. Kuantan is about to become even more connected. The upcoming East Coast Rail Link, set to be completed by 2027, will link Kuantan to Port Klang, Malaysia's largest port. This will make Kuantan a more efficient gateway for goods moving in and out of Malaysia, driving further industrial growth. More jobs, more people, more demand for homes. For investors thinking long-term, Kuantan's property market has the making of a slow and steady success story. So, why should places like Samalaju and Kuantan matter to you? It's because they represent a different kind of property market. Unlike major cities that have seen oversupply and speculative buying, these regions are built on the foundation of industrial growth and employment. When a factory expands or a new logistics hub opens, the demand for housing grows with it. Developers are no longer building for faceless investors. They are building for the people who live and work in these areas. The other advantage? Lower risk of overhang. While luxury units in KL, Johor or Penang may sit empty, the mid-range apartments and terrace houses in secondary regions are far more likely to be rented or bought by locals. Investors here can often expect steady rental yields, driven by actual demand rather by speculative homes. Plus, the Malaysian government continuing to promote regional economic corridors like SCORES and the ECRL, these areas will only become more relevant in the years to come. If we take a step back and look at Malaysia's property market as a whole, the landscape is clearly changing. The days of buying luxury condos on speculation and expecting quick gains are fading. Instead, we are seeing a more grounded, practical shift, one where the smartest investors are following infrastructure, industry, and employment growth. Whether it's the revival of Johor through the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, the suburban expansion of Klang Valley, the industrial surge in Penang's Batu Kawan, or the rise of secondary regions like Samalaju and Kuantan, the opportunities are there. But the key? Understanding who is buying, who is renting, and why. The best investments aren't always in the flashiest developments. Sometimes they're in the places you don't hear about in mainstream headlines. The places where people are building their lives, not just their portfolios. So, next time you hear about property overhangs and unsold units, remember that the real story isn't just about empty condos. It's about where the real demand is and where it's headed next.